So, Bashar, let me begin with you. Could Lebanon's crisis and situation get any worse? Where does the country stand now?
Good evening and thank you. This has been the billion-dollar question ever since the uprising of October 2019. The situation back then was extremely dire. Banks had closed their doors for about 2 weeks and people weren't able to withdraw their money. It's been a year and a half. And this has been the question ever since. People have run out of electricity, they've ran out of fuel for their cars, they've ran out of medication and even children's milk. So in addition to the fact that above 50 to 60% of the Lebanese population currently resides under the poverty line. So can this situation get any worse? Of course it can, because the current criminal sectarian ruling elite has not shown any will or any anticipation in order to solve the crisis, or at least to put the country on a path or a track to be able to cushion the current implosion, the imminent implosion. But is it possible to ask those people for safety and for reforms? I think this is impossible right now.
So, why do you think, Bashar, the investigation into the blast has stalled?
Well, the investigation has stalled because impunity reigns supreme in Lebanon ever since the civil war days. We know that the Taif Agreement, which brought the civil war to an end in 1989, granted a form of impunity to everyone, or an amnesty law was granted to all the different warlords and stakeholders that were the perpetrators of the civil war. And ever since, they have the process of state building, of truth finding, of transitional justice was never attained. And what happened in reality was a transformation of warlords into people in suits and blocks in parliament, and a dissection of the Lebanese state and its institutions, its services, and the public sector into fiefdoms, sectarian fiefdoms of the same warlords. So it is impossible today to even visualize justice and accountability in a country where the perpetrators of all the misery of the Lebanese citizens and residents as well that have experienced over the past 30, 40 years to be the ones actually to hold themselves accountable.
Yeah. So amid this crisis, Bashar, what do you make of the latest Israeli attacks on southern Lebanon? I mean, how will this further complicate the situation in the country?
This brings into the spotlight one of the major challenges that Lebanon faces at the moment, or that has faced ever since 2005 till today. We know that the crisis and the implosion we are living in Lebanon at the moment is out of own making. Okay, our politicians, the ones that elected politicians, unfortunately reached to the, or at least drove the country off the cliff. However, we also know, and what's happening right now in southern Lebanon, or at least over the past 48 hours, attests to the fact that Lebanon is taken hostage by a militant group who functions according to a regional agenda, that of the Iranian expansionist agenda, unfortunately. And to make things worse, the newly appointed, not elected, the newly appointed president in Iran has announced his will, in a way, yesterday during his inauguration, in order to keep supporting this agenda in a way to secure Iran's regime's survival.
So we know that Bashar, political squabbling has blocked the formation of a new government that is needed to unlock international aid. So what's the biggest obstacle before the elections, and who is obstructing steps to form a new government there?
From the looks of it, it seems that the president of the republic and his son-in-law are mostly to be blamed for the obstruction of government formation in Lebanon. And I say this drawing on the conclusion that a prime minister designate at the time, Saad al-Hariri, enjoyed to a certain extent international and regional backing, and he was trying to form a government, although this government was not going to be popular among the Lebanese, but he was trying to form a government according to the French roadmap, which President Emmanuel Macron agreed on with the different Lebanese sectarian leaders in Lebanon when he visited the country. However, Saad al-Hariri 9 months later failed. He stepped down. A new prime minister designate, Najib Mikati, stepped up. By the way, Najib Mikati was the prime minister, the caretaker prime minister, when the shipment of ammonium nitrate entered to Lebanon, to add insult to injury. But anyways, Najib Mikati over the past week or so has been saying that, first of all, progress in talks with the president are very slow, very minimal, and he seems to be citing the same roadblocks that Saad Hariri faced during his own drive for forming a government. This means that President Michel Aoun might not be interested to form a government. President Michel Aoun is looking to ensure the future of his son-in-law, the US-sanctioned Gibran Bassil, and he might want to hold the country hostage in order to ensure that Gibran Bassil might be elected president to follow the president.
So, Bashar, on a wider scale, what could a failed Lebanon mean for the region? Who is likely to benefit from a failed state, and what kind of ramifications it would have on the already conflicting interests in the region?
Well, Lebanon has always been a theater for regional meddling, whether throughout the years of the civil war or the post-war era, where the Saudis had interests and they were heavily involved in Lebanese politics. So was the Syrian regime and the Iranians, of course. Nowadays, a failed Lebanese state, which is we are almost there, by the way, it's happening, can definitely pose a major threat and risk. First of all, on its citizens, and this is and the August 4th port explosion is a major example of how criminal this sectarian elite can be, or the results of their dealings can lead to. In addition to the fact that a failed Lebanon can mean that the country can transform into a narco state similar to the Syrian state, because Lebanese economy, the Lebanese and Syrian economies and politics are tied in a way, given that the major faction, the most powerful faction in Lebanon, Hezbollah, is an ally of the Syrian regime. And we have seen several major shipments of drugs being arrested around the world.
All right, Lama, Bashar, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Strait Talk.